Prince William opened a sealed envelope from the late Queen Elizabeth, and what he read broke him. Inside was a hidden letter about Princess Diana, filled with truths the palace never admitted. For the first time, the future king cried not from grief alone, but from finally knowing everything. The moment William opens the letter. Late one evening, inside the quiet corridors of Windsor, Prince William was handed a sealed envelope. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was from Queen Elizabeth II. The label read, "Private, to my grandson." There were no royal aides present, just him and his assistant. The setting was intimate, heavy with silence. William hesitated before opening it. He hadn't expected anything like this. Not now. Inside, he found a letter, written in the Queen's distinct formal hand. The very first line stopped him cold. "Remember who you are, and who you're meant to be." That sentence shattered something inside him. For years, William had carried the dual weight of public duty and private grief. But the letter, this letter, peeled open everything he had buried. His shoulders stiffened, his expression changed. The future king, always poised, always prepared, began to break. He didn't speak. He didn't move for a long time. Only when he folded the letter back into its envelope did the tears begin to fall. But this wasn't just a personal moment. What was written next would shake everything, especially the truth about his mother. What the hidden letter reveals about Diana. The Queen's hidden letter didn't rely on veiled hints or formal, detached royal phrasing. It was raw, honest, and utterly human. It spoke directly, not as a monarch addressing a future king, but as a grandmother passing on a truth that had weighed on her for decades. And its focus? Princess Diana. For the first time, Queen Elizabeth II acknowledged in writing what so many had suspected, but the institution had never dared to say aloud. Diana suffered, not because she was fragile, but because she was fighting a machine too vast, too cold, and too concerned with protocol over compassion. Her voice, the Queen wrote, was quieted for the sake of stability. That single sentence rewrote royal history. And then came the line that hit William hardest. "Tell him I saw her, how she fought, how she loved." Those words were simple, but carried more weight than any speech or tribute ever could. For Prince William, it was the one thing he had never truly received from the institution: acknowledgement. Not from officials, not from courtiers, and certainly not from the monarch herself. Until now. This wasn't just a note of sympathy. It was a confession, a subtle but undeniable admission that the crown had failed his mother. That behind the glittering palace windows, Diana was isolated, misunderstood, and ultimately left unprotected. For William, this changed everything. The woman he had loved and lost, the one whose legacy he had fought to preserve in quiet, measured ways, was now being vindicated by the very voice that once stayed silent. This letter made Diana more than a tragic figure. It made her a truth long buried. As William read the lines over and over again, alone in his study, something shifted inside him. Not just grief, but clarity. A deep, unmistakable confirmation that his mother's story had never been a myth exaggerated by the media. It had been real. Her pain, her battle, her love, all of it. And now, the very institution that had tried to control that narrative had, in one sealed envelope, surrendered to the truth. Quietly, finally. That night, William didn't just hear his grandmother's voice. He heard Diana's, clearer, than ever. Why the letter was hidden until now? The letter wasn't lost. It was hidden, deliberately, methodically, and with purpose. Queen Elizabeth had stored it deep within the royal archives, labeled and sealed under specific instruction. After my death, release to eldest grandson only. No one else in the family knew, not Charles, not even palace secretaries. It was placed in a file reserved for high-level private correspondence, and it stayed there, untouched, for over a year after the Queen's passing. Then came a quiet discovery. During a routine archival clearance in late 2024, a staff member stumbled upon the envelope, recognized the unique marking, and reported it. What followed was a series of cautious, private decisions at the highest level of the palace. There was no rush to hand it to William. Timing, as always in royal circles, had to be appropriate, controlled. Advisors debated, was now the right moment? Could this be too emotional, too politically risky? But in the end, it was delivered. Quietly. No cameras, no ceremonial handover. Just a manila envelope on a desk in Windsor, addressed to William, from the woman who had led the monarchy for 70 years, speaking one final truth. What made this moment so powerful wasn't just the message, but the delay. William had lived through decades of headlines about his mother, speculation, scandal, documentaries, and tributes, but not once had the institution spoken to him directly, in writing, about what really happened to her, until now. The impact was heavy. The delay had layered the words with even more gravity. Because this wasn't just about a queen writing to her grandson. It was about a monarch acknowledging pain, breaking her own rule of silence, and asking William to hold on to something the crown had long buried, Diana's truth. And when he finally sat down to read it fully, the breakdown wasn't just emotional, it was decades in the making. The breakdown, William's emotional reaction. The door to William's private study was closed. The palace was quiet. No security detail, no Catherine, no children. Just him, the letter, and a storm inside his chest. He sat for a long time before unfolding the page again. He paused at a single line. Guard his heart as you guard his name. The Queen had written those words about Charles, her son, and Diana's greatest heartbreak. But now, William read it differently. She wasn't just talking about the past. She was warning him about the future. The system. The palace machine. The very crown that, at times, had failed them all. That's when the emotion took over. He didn't cry loudly. He didn't sob. But the tears were real. His hands trembled as he lowered the paper. The man known to the world as stoic, composed, unshakable, cracked. He whispered one line to himself, according to a source who checked in minutes later. She was right. They didn't see her. William's grief, long buried under royal duty, had finally found its outlet. For once, he wasn't the Duke, the heir, the Prince of Poise. He was Diana's son, and in that moment, he let himself be just that. But his pain wouldn't stay private for long, because what he did next would ripple through the entire royal family. The fallout. What this means for the royal family. The moment Prince William finished reading the letter, something shifted, not just inside him, but across the entire monarchy. What had been hidden was now exposed, and the question wasn't if there would be consequences, but how deep they would run. Within 48 hours, senior palace aides were quietly alerted. A classified document had been retrieved from the archives. Only a small circle knew what it was. But even without reading its contents, whispers spread through the halls of Kensington Palace and Buckingham. It's about Diana. And it's real. William didn't speak publicly. He didn't need to. His absence from a scheduled appearance 2 days later spoke volumes. Insiders said he requested personal time, but what he was really doing was processing something the institution had never given him: closure mixed with rage. At the same time, royal advisors were scrambling. How do you control a story that threatens to reignite the most painful wound in modern royal history? More importantly, how do you frame it in a way that protects both the monarchy and William's rising image? Because William's emotional breakdown wasn't weakness. It was power. For the first time, a future king had been handed undeniable proof that the institution had failed his mother. And now, his moral position was unshakable. Internally, tension rose. Charles, reportedly shaken by the letters surfacing, avoided comment. Camilla, according to one source, told her staff, "Let him have his moment, but it doesn't rewrite the past." That remark didn't sit well with William. And then there was Catherine. As William's closest confidant, she saw his pain up close. Sources said she urged caution, but didn't discourage him from speaking if he chose to. "If it brings peace," she reportedly said, "then it's time the truth had its place." What followed wasn't explosive. It was quieter, more controlled. But behind the scenes, the palace was preparing for impact. Legal teams reviewed archive protocols. Communication directors prepped talking points in case something leaked. And one senior aide admitted, "We're walking a line between tradition and accountability." The letter, once hidden, had already changed the family dynamics. William was no longer just heir to the throne. He had become the guardian of Diana's legacy, a role the institution had never anticipated and now couldn't control. But the Queen didn't just write to remember Diana. She wrote with purpose, and that purpose was a command, one that William was now expected to fulfill. The Queen's intentions, what Elizabeth meant for William to do. Queen Elizabeth II didn't just leave her grandson with memories, she left him with a mission. The letter, though short, was carefully written. Every line carried weight. Every word was deliberate. This was not a sentimental farewell. It was instruction. One paragraph stood out. "You must tell her story when time allows. The crown stands on truth, or it falls on silence." It wasn't a suggestion. It was a warning. The Queen had spent her life balancing tradition and control. But in her final years, especially after the turbulence of Harry and Meghan's exit, she had begun reflecting more deeply. Those close to her say she questioned the institution's handling of Diana more than she ever admitted aloud. And this letter was the clearest sign that she had come to regret parts of the past. But she also knew that if change was going to come, it couldn't come from her. It had to come from the next generation. From the man Diana raised, not the institution that tried to erase her voice. Elizabeth didn't call for revenge. She didn't ask William to destroy or expose. What she asked was much harder: to remember, to speak, to restore. The Queen's words acknowledged Diana's suffering, but also instructed William to ensure the public didn't forget. "She wasn't just a mother," the Queen wrote. "She was your compass. Let her guide you still." And in that, William found his next step, not just as a son grieving a lost mother, but as a future monarch grappling with a past too painful to ignore. He discussed it with Catherine. He spoke with senior advisors. He even asked to see other letters in the archive. anything from his grandmother that might add context. But this letter stood alone. It was personal. It was private. And yet, it demanded public reflection. The Queen, for all her reserve, had handed her grandson something revolutionary: permission to change the narrative. Now, the question wasn't if William would act, it was how, and as William weighed his next move, the monarchy braced itself. Because once a secret is seen, it can't be unseen, and the future of the crown may soon depend on how much truth it's willing to carry. The hidden letter's wider implications for Diana's story. For decades, the story of Princess Diana has been told, but always through the palace's lens. Her struggles were softened, her defiance explained away, her voice often drowned in royal silence. But Queen Elizabeth's letter changed that. With one handwritten page, the late monarch acknowledged that Diana's pain was real, and more importantly, that it was seen. This wasn't just personal, it was political. The Queen's words confirmed what Diana had said in her interviews, what biographers hinted at, and what the public always suspected: that Diana's cries for help inside the palace were often met with indifference. One line from the letter stood out as brutally honest: "We protected the crown, but we didn't protect her." Those 8 words rewrote decades of narrative. For William, this was no longer about memory. It was about history. The royal institution had spent years crafting a controlled image of Diana, the misunderstood princess, the outsider, the tragic figure. But the Queen's letter shifted that image. It positioned Diana not as a problem, but as a truth-teller who paid the price for challenging the system too soon. And now, that system was being forced to face her again, through her son. Royal historians have already begun re-examining documents and interviews in light of the letter. One former courtier admitted, "If the Queen herself acknowledged this, it's time to reopen what we thought we knew." Even among younger royals, the ripple effects are real. Prince Harry, though distant from the crown, has long voiced the same concerns about institutional neglect. Now, with the Queen's private words backing that legacy, William and Harry, divided for years, suddenly find themselves on parallel tracks again. The public sees it too. Social media exploded after the first report of the letter surfaced. Thousands shared old clips of Diana speaking about her battles with mental health, her isolation, and the lack of support. One viral post read simply, "She told the truth." They just weren't ready to hear it. Now, they have no choice. But what would William do with this truth? That was the next question. And the answer would define not just Diana's legacy, but his own. William's decision point: what he will do with the letter. Prince William now holds something that no royal ever has, a personal truth endorsed by the crown itself. But with that truth comes the hardest decision of all: keep it hidden or let it shape the future. The Queen's letter didn't demand immediate action. It offered space and timing. "Tell her story when time allows," she wrote. And William knows that moment might be now. But the stakes are high. If he chooses to go public, even in part, he risks reopening the very wounds the monarchy has spent decades trying to seal. The palace thrives on silence, on carefully crafted appearances. Releasing such a letter, or even hinting at its content, could destabilize everything from public trust to internal alliances. And yet, remaining silent would mean denying his mother her due. Again. Those close to William say he's torn. He's already had quiet conversations with Catherine, who, like Diana, knows what it means to live under royal scrutiny. She's reportedly told him, "If it brings truth, it brings peace." There's also discussion behind the scenes. William's advisors are divided, some urging him to wait until his father's reign ends, others suggesting a carefully curated tribute to Diana with a reference to the letter. But it's not just about strategy anymore. William understands that this is a legacy moment. He's not just the heir to the throne. He's the last person alive who truly knew Diana as Mum. And now, he's the only person trusted by both his grandmother and the public to carry that memory with justice. Every option carries weight. Release the letter publicly and face potential backlash. Keep it private and risk being seen as complicit in the silence. Share it with selected historians. Publish it later as king. Right now, William's study remains quiet. The letter stays locked in a drawer, read only by a handful. But every day it remains there. The pressure builds, and so does the responsibility. Because whatever he decides, one thing is now certain. This letter is no longer just a private message. It's a ticking clock beneath the crown. And William holds the key. The potential risks and rewards for William. For Prince William, the letter left behind by Queen Elizabeth II is more than a historical artifact. It's a crossroads, a delicate balance between personal truth and institutional responsibility. In that envelope lies his mother's vindication, his grandmother's quiet confession, and now, his own test of leadership. The potential reward? Monumental. If William chooses to honor the message within the letter, to acknowledge Princess Diana's suffering publicly, to validate the pain that was once buried beneath protocol, he could usher in a new era for the crown, one built not on detachment and perfection, but on honesty, healing, and human connection. A monarchy that can admit it got something wrong and still move forward stronger. But the risk, equally massive. Any public action could be interpreted as a critique of past leadership, especially King Charles III's handling of Diana's life and legacy. It might cause friction within the family, tensions with palace advisors, unease with those who've spent decades rebuilding the monarchy's image post-Diana. And then there's the press. They've always followed William with a mix of admiration and scrutiny. If he speaks, if he moves too boldly, he could be accused of politicizing grief, of reopening wounds best left sealed, of dividing rather than uniting. Yet the greatest risk may be personal. Re-engaging with Diana's story means reliving the trauma of her loss, not just as a royal, but as a son. It means revisiting that day in 1997, walking behind her coffin under the world's gaze, knowing the palace never fully embraced her and never truly protected her. But William is not the 15-year-old boy grieving in silence anymore. He is the Prince of Wales, the future king, and most importantly, he is the man his mother once hoped would lead differently. The letter gives him something no advisor, no title, no crown ever could: moral authority. It came directly from the Queen herself, sealed with her own intention. "Speak for her," she implied. "Protect what was silenced." Now, that responsibility rests with him. One royal insider said it best: "If William tells this story, he'll rewrite the future. If he doesn't, he'll stay trapped in the past." The choice is William's. But this moment won't last forever. The clock is ticking, and the world is watching. What this means for the future of the monarchy. The Queen's hidden letter has done what no scandal, no documentary, no explosive memoir ever managed to achieve. It pierced the walls of royal silence from within. not through public outcry, but through a quiet, handwritten truth meant only for Prince William. And in doing so, it shattered the illusion that some stories were too delicate to touch. For decades, the monarchy has survived by maintaining control of image, of narrative, of emotion. But this letter, written in Queen Elizabeth's own hand, suggests a different kind of strength, not the kind that hides the pain, but the kind that dares to face it. She didn't ask William to protect the crown by pretending. She asked him to protect it by evolving. And now, standing at the edge of that request, William finds himself in a position no royal heir has ever truly faced, one that merges lineage and legacy, duty and truth. He is not just the future king. He is the living thread between two powerful royal women, Diana, the silenced rebel who spoke too soon, and Elizabeth, the sovereign who spoke too late. The decision he now faces is monumental. Does he keep the letter private, as a grandson guarding a family's grief? Or does he honor the call to action buried within it, the call to speak Diana's truth, not as a wound but as part of the institution's future? Make no mistake, this is no longer just a family moment. It's a constitutional reckoning. Because if William chooses transparency, it sets a precedent that the monarchy can grow, that it can admit mistakes, that it can connect with a generation that values authenticity over appearances. But if he chooses silence, the risk is equally clear. The crown may remain intact, but its relevance may continue to crumble. In today's world, tradition is no longer enough. People want heart. They want honesty. They want to see royals not just in gold carriages, but in human light. The question now isn't whether William is prepared to lead. It's whether the institution he's destined to inherit is prepared to change. Because one sealed envelope, one letter buried in the archives of Windsor, has done more than reopen a wound. It's reopened a path, a chance to lead differently, a chance to prove that behind the thrones, behind the walls, behind the centuries, there are still hearts that break and voices that must be heard. The Queen's secret letter didn't just reopen old wounds, it exposed them. Diana's voice, once silenced, now echoes through William. He's no longer just an heir. He's a son with a mission. And as the crown faces its past, one truth remains. The monarchy's future now belongs to her legacy.